Hi, and welcome to another edition of Seniors Today. I'm your host, Tom Barty, and today we have Kathy Hoffman, who is representing Habitat for Humanity. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you, Tom. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Well, it's our pleasure, and just for our audience that may or may not be aware of your storied past.
You don't want to waste time going through all that.
Well, I'll hit the highlights, starting with you as being a former council member for the city of Vallejo.
Correct.
And also a seasoned veteran field rep for Congressman George Miller.
20 years.
And recently retired.
A year ago, correct.
So congratulations on that,
Thank you. Thank you. It looks like I got out just in time.
Yeah, seems that way.
Given that he's retiring himself this year.
Yeah. Well, it was probably planned, and you couldn't divulge the information.
I think what happened was he just couldn't handle it without me.
He couldn't live without you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I can totally understand that. You know, what's interesting, just on a quick side note, is that a member of my extended family was sort of a mentor to George when he first started.
Really?
Yeah.
Who was that?
Congressman Fraser from Minneapolis.
Ah, your old hometown.
Yeah, years ago. So George, one day while we were out picking garbage together on Coastal Cleanup Day.
Ah, okay.
We ran out of things to talk about, and that came up. Yeah, look at those cigarette butts over there. Oh, by the way.
That's funny.
Anyway,
Oh.
so you have been really actively involved in Habitat for Humanity for many years.
Close to 20 years, correct.
Wow. And how did you get started with that?
Probably like a lot of other people, back in the 80s after Jimmy Carter was president and he got active with Habitat. Habitat got a lot of publicity due to the Carter's involvement. And I probably saw that he was building houses for Habitat, and I thought, that sounds like something I'd like to do. So then in the mid-90s, there was an article in the Vallejo paper, Solano Habitat was rehabbing an old farmhouse on Amador across from the tennis courts. And they were going to do a lot split and then build a new house around the corner on Capitol Street. So I thought, that sounds like fun, so I grabbed my hammer and been working with them off and on ever since.
You know, what's really funny is, of course, you and I worked together for a couple of years in that building across the street from that project. And right near the end of the time I was in that office, I was loading stuff into my car, and this lady came rushing across the street, and saying, George.
She thought
I was George Miller.
I bet.
And I had to tell her, oh, sorry, ma'am, I'm just lowly district director.
Yeah.
But that was a lady who still lives in that house today,
right.
That Habitat for Humanity did back then. And I just remembered to thank you. She asked me to thank you for everything you did for her and her family.
Nice. Yeah, well, she caught me one day doing the same thing, loading my car. So she invited me over to the house, and we talked about what had happened since we worked on her house close to 20 years ago.
Yeah, and she said she had like a dozen kids, and now they're all raised and on their own.
She had a lot of kids, yeah. And I had gotten the congressman to come to, I don't know if it was the house dedication ceremony, but when we were finished, he came and was there.
Yeah.
So I think she met him, and that's why she knew, she thought you were him.
Well, you know, a big guy, probably 50 pounds overweight with white hair.
Mustache, got to be
It's either George Miller, Tom Barty, or Gary Salvadori.
There you go.
In Vallejo. So, anyway, I run into that all the time.
I bet you do.
You know, that's just a great example of how powerful Habitat for Humanity really is and how it changes people's lives.
It really does, one house at a time.
And so was that the first house in Vallejo that was done?
That was correct. Those were the first two houses, the old farmhouse we rehabbed and then the new house on Capitol Street. We were lucky at the time because the city had the redevelopment agency, and they used redevelopment funds to purchase the property.
Oh, okay.
And we've done that with a couple of other cities, Vacaville and Fairfield. We've gotten some redevelopment funds as well. And since Habitat doesn't like to buy the property themselves, they rely on the cities, the counties, either giving them money or the land. And now that redevelopment has gone away, since the state did it in 3 years ago, Habitat's going to have a harder time trying to get property. In Fairfield, we were lucky a number of years ago to get community development block grant funds to buy property. in Fairfield, and we've just finished 2 houses last year at the corner of Acacia and Clay Street. It's behind the Food Max on North Texas Street.
Okay.
And the second piece of property is downtown at the corner of Missouri and Taylor Streets. And right now we're doing pre-development work, and it's going to cost about $400,000 to build the houses. So I'm doing the fundraising for that. I'm the
Wow.
development coordinator for the Habitat Board.
Uh-huh.
And I've started, we were real lucky, I think, now that we've got 2 houses under our belt, because we've got the track record of being able to build the houses. We've got Anheuser-Busch committed $35,000 this year to the new build, and they gave us a total of, I think, $75,000 the last 2 years for the Acacia Clay builds. Valero Refinery gave us $25,000 last year, and we're hoping they'll give us another $25,000 this year. Wells Fargo Bank gave us $15,000 last year, and again, we're applying to them. So I think we'll be able to raise it. It'll be several months before we get to that point where we can start building. In the past, Habitat would go ahead and break ground and start building without having all the money. So you'd start and you'd stop, and you'd start and you'd stop, which is no way to build a house, let alone much of anything else.
Yeah.
So several years ago, the board decided we want 75% of the money in the bank before we start. So we did that with the last 2 houses, which was one reason it took us 4 years to start building them.
So your board it consists of people from cities throughout the county?
Well, actually, 10 years ago, we took on Napa County as well. So we've got a couple of Napa board members, and the rest of the board members are from Solano County.
So it's the Napa Solano.
Solano, Napa.
Oh, of course.
Of
S
course.
comes before N. I knew that. So,
Only because Solano started the affiliate first, and we took on Napa several
and
years ago.
I think on your name tag, Napa is in smaller font.
It probably
than
is,
Solano,
right?
Too.
Yeah. We've also been trying to build houses in Napa, but Napa's an even bigger challenge than Solano County because property is so expensive there. And there's a Gasser Foundation in Napa County. The Gasser family owned a lot of downtown Napa, and this foundation is willing to fund rehabilitating houses in Napa, but they don't necessarily want to fund building new houses. So we've gotten $15,000 from them for the past 3 years to rehab several houses. The current one we're doing is in American Canyon. It's owned by Eric Mees and his family. Eric was a hang glider and was in a bad accident 4 years ago and is paralyzed from the chest down. And he's been in VA hospitals because he's a veteran since then, going through rehab. And he can't come home until his house has been modified to accept his wheelchair. So we got, not only did we get Gasser money, but we got some other, the family raised like $15,000 through small donations from friends and family. And we extended the bathroom out so we could have a wheel-in shower, and then we did some other modifications in the house. So we should be done in another couple of months.
So you do new construction from ground up,
Correct.
and you do renovations. And I think I remember attending one in Vallejo. George happened to be there.
When
2 years ago.
it's probably closer to 3, if not
and
longer.
it was on the hill. It had kind of a view.
Yeah, back when the housing market collapsed and we had so many foreclosed homes in Vallejo in every community, the federal government came up with this neighborhood stabilization program where they would give money to cities, and cities could either choose to work with a for-profit contractor to rehab the homes, and then the city would sell them to low-income families, or they could partner with Habitat. And we were fortunate in getting, I think, about $700,000 from Vallejo through the federal government to buy 4 homes in Vallejo, and we rehabbed them all. And then the city sold them to a low-income family. It wasn't a traditional Habitat house where the Habitat held the mortgage, and it was a Habitat-selected family. But we were very pleased to be able to have that kind of tide us over between building new houses. And I actually enjoyed doing the rehabs more because you're taking a house that was physically abused.
Yeah.
You know, the previous owners were mad at the bank, they were mad at, losing the house, so they tended to take it out on the house. So we came in and fixed it up and like new again, and then sold it to somebody who hopefully appreciates it a little more.
Yeah, I bought a house one time where the previous owner had that same attitude, and he ripped all of the electrical wiring, like physically ripped it out of the walls, through the sheetrock, and took an axe into the wall. It was pretty serious stuff.
That's too bad. Yeah. But now we're back to building new, and we'd love to build again in Vallejo if we ever get to the point where maybe we could get some CDBG funds again, community development money, to buy a piece of property.
So how do you determine, is it the money that determines which city you do the homes in? Or
we'd like to be in every city in the county, and plus, in Napa County. We've got the 2 houses in Vallejo, 2 in Benicia. The city owned that property, and we down by the yacht club, so it's a very nice location that we built 2 homes on. We've built a total of the last 2 in Fairfield, and then another 4 on a cul-de-sac that the city gave us the property. And then Vacaville had torn down some old apartments years ago, and we got money through their redevelopment agency to build, I think there were 2 duplexes up there. We'd love to build in Suisun City, Dixon, and Rio Vista, but again, the opportunity hasn't presented itself. And given how long it takes us to build a home, it takes about a year to do it, it's difficult to pre-plan, and we're working on one home, and then especially since we've had the property to build on now. So the City of American Canyon might own some property. It's redevelopment property, so they have to sell it at fair market value. But the Napa County's got community development funds there. They might be willing to give us to buy the property. So there's a possibility in Napa. But we haven't really looked at what we're going to do after this next build. Maybe again apply to another city for CDBG funds and see if we can get the money to build.
the last I looked, the city of Vallejo has a whole list of surplus properties, and some of them are buildable lots.
We approached the city maybe 6 years ago. There's a vacant piece of property next to Farragut School on Farragut Street, between the school and the Farragut House. And the problem with it is it kind of slopes down in the back, so there would be challenges.
I know a great architect that can help you with that.
Well, one of our board members is an architect in Benicia, so we're doing fine in that regard.
Okay.
We'd really like to, again, if we could find a flat lot, and probably a lot of the ones the city has aren't necessarily
There's a couple on Lemon Street, the foot of Lemon Street, and a few other locations around town. So.
Okay.
But I don't know if they're in the market right now to handle that. They're kind of rebuilding their people in the economic development and asset management. So
Right.
Might be a while there.
Yeah.
So when you build a house or do the rehab, do you get, I know you have volunteers, but do you get volunteer labor from any of the building trades, or?
Yeah, some of them, especially like the electrical workers. We had them come in, and they usually wire the house. They get their apprenticeship class to come in and wire the house. Plumbing is probably the same thing.
So you turn the water on in the bathroom and it comes on in the kitchen?
Let's hope not, right? But we've been real fortunate. Actually, the demand to build for volunteers is greater than we can supply. Travis Air Force Base provides a lot of the personnel, and their personnel are required to volunteer.
Wow.
On something. And they tend to like Habitat because they enjoy the building versus doing any kind of volunteer work where you're sitting inside doing something. So we work Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays, and almost every day would be a day when we had at least a handful of Travis personnel, if not more. One of the advantages to being a sponsor for the houses, like when Anheuser-Busch sponsored, they get so many build days dedicated to their employees, which the companies like, because it's a team building experience. And usually we end up doing those on Saturdays. But any of the sponsors that give over $5,000 get so many dedicated days for their employees. But we can only accommodate usually 15 people a day. We'd end up having people falling over each other, if you get too many people on site. So we don't want to just open it up and let any number of people show up. Usually what we'll do, you have to go online to the Habitat website to sign up to volunteer. And then once we start building, we'll send out an email maybe once a month that says these are the days we're building. The first 15 people to respond get to work.
Well, what is that website, by the way?
It's www.solanonapahabitat.org.
www.solanonapahabitat.org. Oh, okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Is there also a phone number?
The office number is 422-1948, 707.
Okay.
But if they call the office they're going to be told the same thing. You need to go online, sign up online, because we do all the volunteer scheduling through the computer.
How many members are on your board?
I think right now we've got about a dozen, and I think we're set up to have 15. So we're always looking for more board members if anyone's interested in.
Yeah, and they're exciting meetings, so you don't have to worry about being bored.
Oh, absolutely, right.
Yeah, well, that's good. So how do you decide who is going to get, how do you screen for the people to get into the homes?
Usually when we're getting ready to start building, we'll put a letter, a notice in the paper saying anybody who's interested in applying to get one of the homes needs to show up to a meeting. And then usually we end up with dozens of people, if not more, because the need is so great. And then people will fill out an application, and we'll go through, and you have to meet low income criteria. And we'll go through and we'll screen the ones that make too much money, and we'll screen those who don't make enough money, because Habitat doesn't give the houses away. We give a hand up, not a handout.
Qualify for
you've got to qualify, because Habitat holds the mortgage interest free, and then the person pays Habitat back, and then we use those mortgage payments to fund the next house, the next build. And each homeowner is required to put in a minimum of 250 hours of sweat equity. They have to be out there building their own house with all the volunteers.
So over the course of a year, that can be fairly simple. If it takes a year to build the house, to get the hours.
Well, but 250 for a single parent, and then 500 hours for a couple.
Okay.
So sometimes they will let them have family, other friends that want to come in and donate time and then have their hours donated. So we do allow a minimum of that. Mm-hmm. But then we end up with, say, anywhere from 6 to 10 families that qualify, and then the family selection committee has to meet with them and pick the family that has the most need. They're living in 6 people in a 1-bedroom apartment. They're living, with another family it's just too crowded. So we pick the family that has the biggest need.
Mm-hmm. So do you ever have an allocation for any sector of the population, like senior citizens, for example?
No, we go based on their need. The 2 houses we just finished in Fairfield last year, one of the homeowners is a grandmother who's raising 3 grandkids. So there's a senior citizen there, yeah. I think that's the only one. I think the rest of them have just been either single moms like the other family or couples raising kids.
So again, if somebody was interested, you either put it in the paper or they can go to the website and check it out.
Yeah, there'll be something on our website that says we're now accepting applications for our next build. Or they can call the office and ask. And they'll be told, well, we're not ready yet. But so sometime probably in the next 3 or 4 months, I would think, we'll be to the point where we're ready to start taking applications.
Okay. So another really cool thing that Habitat does is they accept donations of construction materials and building fixtures, and they resell them to raise money.
Correct, through the Restore.
It's called the Restore.
Restore. Restore is a Habitat brand. There's over 800 Restores around the country. And our affiliate, Solano Napa, almost went out of business 4 years ago because we weren't raising the money to cover our own administrative costs, let alone raise the money to build houses. That's one of the reasons it took us 4 years to build the last 2 houses. And we had talked about starting a Restore, and it's a big undertaking to get the thing started. You've got to have some money, to rent the building and get the thing off the ground. And our board president at the time got the board to make the commitment, and we went ahead and kicked it off. And the Restore is now, I think it's about 2.5 years old, and it is going gangbusters. It's exceeded our expectations many times over again. It's really nice to see. And everything in the store is donated. We do buy some paint that we mark up a little bit and sell, but everything else is donated. If people are remodeling their kitchen and they want to donate the cabinets, the sink, the countertop, the appliances, they save money because it's not going to have to go to the landfill, and they get a tax write-off. And then we just started a new program called Deconstruction, where if the project's big enough, our volunteers will go into your house, very carefully remove the cabinets, the sink, the appliances, and you save the money by not having to pay your contractor. Mm-hmm. So it's a win-win. They get a tax write-off, the material stays out of the landfill, and Restore then turns around and sells the items to someone who needs something inexpensive. And everything in the store is anywhere from 50 to 90% discounted.
Yeah, I know. I bought a kitchen faucet, a toilet, and a few other things, and they're all almost in perfect condition.
Yeah, and we do get some stuff new. Orchard Supply up in Napa gives us a lot of new material there. They're either closing out a line or whatever. And so we do get a lot of new material as well. And new material is automatically discounted 50%.
So you probably get some things maybe from Home Depot or from Lowe's?
Actually, we don't. They have their own way of disposing of their own material that they can't sell, and it doesn't come to us, unfortunately.
So don't people making donations go through the website? Is that how you hook up with them, or?
A lot of people, go online, and if they don't know about Restore, a lot of people have seen Restore around, and they'll Google Restore in Solano and come up with our contact information. Or they'll Google, recycling, reuse,